أستراليا وتحديداً من ملبورن بحييكم بموسم جديد من أسماء من التاريخ. رح نتعرف سوا على شخصيات أسترالية من أصل لبناني تركوا بصمة بالمجتمع الأسترالي. خلينا سوا نفتتح الموسم الثالث من أسماء من التاريخ. اليوم رح نفتتح من ملبورن استراليا الموسم الجديد من أسماء من التاريخ بشخصية بارزة أسترالية من أصل لبناني، السيد ستيف براكس، وهو أول حاكم من أصل عربي لولاية فيكتوريا. خلينا سوا نكتشفه ببروفايل. Mr. Steve Bracks, thank you for welcoming us in Australia, in Melbourne. You are the former governor of Victoria, and you are from Lebanese descent. Your grandfather Salim Bracks immigrated from Zahle to Melbourne in 1890, and then your father, and then you were born here in Ballarat in 1954. Tell us more about this immigration.
Well, thank you. It's great to have you here in Australia as well, showcasing Australia and the Lebanese diaspora. Yes, my great-grandparents came out here in the 1890s on both sides of my family, from my father's side from Zali and my mother's side from Bekfaya. And that's why the characteristics are there, but you know, it is more than 100 years ago. And they came out largely because of, I think, the Ottoman period and the oppression at the time, and people migrated to America, Canada, Australia, and ours came out to Australia. Originally they came out with very, very little. They were what we called hawkers, that is buying and selling what they could, moving around our state here and trading. And then they made enough to have retail in groceries, in grocery shops, and then later on in clothing and textile and in the fashion industry. And that was really a development over many, many years. But I'm very proud of my ancestry, very proud of Australia, but I'm also proud of the Lebanese ancestry, and so is the rest of my family as well.
Of course, and we are proud of you, of course. I know that you were born in Ballarat, like we said, in 1954, and you went to college there. Tell us more about your childhood. Did your parents speak Arabic? Did you learn a bit? What did you learn from them about Lebanon?
No, the language wasn't kept. In fact, you've got to imagine what Australia was like in 1890. Migration wasn't a big thing. The Lebanese were amongst the few of the migrants. And so assimilation into your new country was very important. So I can remember my grandmother saying, when we asked her, can we learn Arabic, she said, no, you've got to speak English. And so the language was lost, unfortunately, but what was kept was the culture, food, of course.
The most important thing.
The best food in the world, and it was kept, and we all cook and eat
why
Lebanese
didn't
food.
she want you to speak Arabic?
Because
was it the shame, or she wanted you to really get along with the Australian culture?
Yes, it was the latter. It wasn't shame. It was really be a part of this new country as quickly as you can and adopt its cultures, its mores, and its language. And so English was spoken. I mean, there was a few words, but not many. But certainly, you know, Christmas and other events, the wider family got together. We discussed the Middle East. We discussed Lebanon. We had food, as I mentioned. So the culture was still kept from that point of view.
This is very important. You went to college in Ballarat and you got a degree in business and in education. That's why you taught also in many universities. And you went into politics. Why? Is it an interest?
No, it was an interest from very early on for me. Back into university, I learnt about so much and I got politically active in the student movement at the time, then in the political party, the Social Democratic Party, the Labor Party. I organised campaigns. So whilst I was teaching, I was also involved in politics in the community, trying to get involved, trying to make a difference, trying to change things. And eventually the politics took over and I eventually, after standing and losing a few elections, which is character building, winning an election when I came to Melbourne, our capital city, and then winning not only from opposition but becoming the government and becoming the premier and the leader of my party.
Yes, of course.
So it was a progression over a long period. I had a long apprenticeship in politics, but I think that grounding in my business degree, my teaching career, I think that helped a bit, but so did my involvement in the community more broadly.
I know that you were fond of your father and he inspired you a lot. And I know that also he triggered something in you to go into politics.
Yeah, well, certainly my father was different to a lot of the fathers of Australian background in that he encouraged debate, he encouraged discussion. Talking about politics and religion was something he wanted to happen, and that's something that he engendered in me. In fact, I can remember sitting around the dinner table with our family, and we'd be talking and arguing for hours, and the rest of the family would leave and it'd be Dad and I talking and arguing. And that's what he encouraged. An interest in politics, an interest in world affairs, an interest in what was happening around us. I can remember, for example, arguing with him. My first big argument was over capital punishment, over the death penalty, which he said was justified in certain circumstances, but was about to be abolished in Australia.
Indeed.
And I took the total opposite view. And I can remember that raging discussion I had with him, for example. So yes, he was inspirational from my point of view.
Beautiful. From this inspiration, we'll go into your career, but after this break.
Okay.
تملك استراليا 16% من موارد الذهب الاقتصادية العالمية، وهي ثاني أكبر بلد من بعد الصين بصناعة الذهب، وفي مناجم كتير من الذهب ومن الألماس.
It's not cheap to do business in Australia. So your skills and abilities, a bit like Germany, have to be paramount. And so investing in education is very important.
You were elected 3 times governor of Victoria, the first time in 1999, second time in 2002, and third time in 2006. How did you elaborate your plan over these 3 mandates?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think the benefit I had here, which would be very hard to replicate in Lebanon, is I had my political party behind me. I had a majority, I had unity.
What are the major things you changed, you totally changed when you came as a premier? حبيت كتير شخصيته لمستر ستيف براكس، خاصة لما خبرني عن طفولته وخبرني قد ايه تأثر بوالده، وخاصة انه هو اللي ألهمه يدخل حقل السياسة لما كانوا يتناقشوا حول مواضيع مهمة جدا، منها اجتماعية ومنها سياسية، وأيضا الملفت القيم اللي تربى عليها واللي قدر بعدين يربي ولاده عليها أيضا.
Well, when I heard that this program was to be done in Australia, I was actually pretty pleased. I thought it's good timing. The diaspora in Australia is, the Lebanese diaspora are a strong and active group, particularly in Melbourne and Sydney. We have a great Chamber of Commerce here, the Australian Lebanese Chamber of Commerce, but you know, Lebanese have achieved a lot in business, in politics, in the arts, in property and investment, in a whole range of areas. And so I thought this is going to be a pretty good thing actually, to be part of the diaspora around the world and have Australia showcased, because we are a significant part of the Lebanese story and it should be told as well, and the people in it are the best way to tell it.
I know you were an advisor to two former premiers before you were elected. What did you learn from them, maybe being their advisor? And you know, it was important for you not to make the same mistakes.
Totally. I learnt both the good and the bad. The good, some of the reforms and changes they undertook, which were beneficial. You know, what we see around us in Melbourne and Australia is part of the things that they built. But some of the negatives, financial management, making sure you live within a budget, making sure that you fund programs that you're undertaking. So I brought that into government. I brought some of those lessons that I learnt and brought that through my party's policies as well, which we did. And that was very important.
Yes, indeed. You were elected the first time in 1999.
Yes.
And before you were elected for a second mandate. And I heard, and of course I did my researches, that since your first mandate, you have changed a lot in Victoria. And why do you think you succeeded in flourishing a bit the economy?
Yeah, I was first elected in 1999, a very, very small majority, but then went on in 2002 for the biggest majority in Victoria's history, and then I won a third election before I retired. And I think the reason why the economy is going well, why we're able to do things, improving our rail system, improving our road network, building infrastructure in our great stadiums we can see around us, and some of the recreation facilities, was because we had a plan. We had a plan before we came into government to use a strong economy and the proceeds of that to invest back into the community, to invest back into the things which would make a difference in people's lives. And I think having the plan before we came in was very, very important. We wanted a strong economy, but we wanted to put that strong economy to work in building services, in building infrastructure, and in delivering good quality services to the public in health, in our hospital system, in education. A high educational attainment is very, very important for our future, high skills, and we wanted to make sure we invested in that too.
Yes. You were elected 3 times Governor of Victoria, the first time in 1999, second time in 2002, and third time in 2006. How did you elaborate your plan over these 3 mandates? Of course, you have changed a lot into economics, but what did you do other than the infrastructure? And where do you think personally you have succeeded as a premier?
I think the biggest success is maintaining Melbourne and Victoria as the most livable city and the most livable region in the world. Whilst our population was growing, and we're now grown significantly, where our capital city is about 4 million people, we're about 6 million people in Victoria, Australia's about 25 million people. But whilst we're growing, making sure we have quality services in the health system, in education, in transport, making sure we have good infrastructure, so we have a productive state in our road system, in our rail system, in our port. These are very, very important. So investing the benefits of growth in our population and economic growth back into the community, and that's really what we try to do, and to do it in a sustainable way.
Of course. By
having a high quality lifestyle. We want to make sure that we maintain our position as the most livable region, the most livable city in the world. We're rated that by international agencies, and that really takes a lot of effort, a lot of patience, a lot of time to make sure we're investing in the right things.
Yeah. I know if you were in Lebanon and doing the same great job you did in Melbourne, do you think you would have succeeded the same, or you think that it's totally another political system, another economic system, or do you think you would have done the same great job you did in Victoria?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think the benefit I had here, which would be very hard to replicate in Lebanon, is I had my political party behind me. I had a majority, I had unity, I had a plan which everyone agreed to. Getting agreement and getting a majority would be very hard in Lebanon, and unless you have that, it's very hard to achieve. And I think that's probably why it would be harder to translate, although I'd love that to happen. I think probably it got closer under former Prime Minister Rafik Hariri,
Yes.
who I saw and met. I met him twice. I met him when I was in opposition. I met him when I was governor and went there. The rebuilding with Solidaire, the investment back in Lebanon, I think that was probably the closest you had in Lebanon to what we're doing here to some extent. So if more of that can happen, well then Lebanon will benefit.
Yes, indeed. You talked about your political party.
Yes.
It's the Liberal
yes,
Party.
the Australian Labor Party.
Yeah,
yes.
the Australian Labor Party. Please, if you can explain more about this party and how you teamed up, you said. You said a great word, that everybody was supporting you and you teamed up. Let us know more about this Labor Party, and I know you're still involved till today.
Yes, yes. Yes, well, the Labor Party is a social democratic party similar to the European social democratic parties. That is, we believe in the market, in the capitalist system, but we want to give back the proceeds of that into better services and better infrastructure for people. So we intervene to assist people. And that's our political party. But we couldn't achieve anything. Yeah. And I couldn't have achieved anything unless I had the majority of my party behind me. That is, agreeing on the plan, agreeing to get legislation through, agreeing to get plans through, agreeing on the budget we needed to implement our projects. And so that required significant leadership to make sure we had a team that was behind me and behind our government, because it's very hard to achieve that if behind you don't have support.
Of course.
And so I think that's a lesson for all leaders around the world, and certainly it was the precondition for success here in Victoria.
Yes, and I know that, of course, you were supported by all the Lebanese and the Australian from Lebanese descent. I know that in Melbourne there are maybe more than 200,000 Lebanese or from Lebanese descent. How is your relationship to them? Do they work with you? Are they supporting you?
Yes, they are. Look, they're a great part of our community, the Lebanese diaspora. Actually, 200,000, but if you take it over a long period of time, it's probably about 400,000 of descendants and of the Lebanese community. But what people don't realise about Australia is we are very multicultural.
Yes, indeed.
We've got people from all over the world.
Yes.
40% of the people in Melbourne have a non-English speaking background.
Yes.
We have the biggest Greek population outside Greece. We have one of the biggest Italian populations. We have people from the Horn of Africa, from continental Europe, from Eastern Europe, and from the Middle East. And the Lebanese are some of our older migrants. Melbourne has older migration than Sydney. Ours came at the end of the gold rush in Victoria in the 1890s, and then after the Second World War. Sydney had more of the post-Civil War migration. So ours is older and tends to be a bit different in composition, but it's from many parts of the world. So I pushed very strongly the benefits of multiculturalism, of internationalising our country, internationalising our state, and I think it's been a great benefit to us here in Australia.
It's good. You did a reform, a kind of reform here in Victoria. What are the major things you changed, you totally changed when you came as a Premier?
I think we changed the relationship between our city and the regions to a much more European setting where our regions are strong. So we built strong rail lines between our city and our regions, between Melbourne and Ballarat, Melbourne and Geelong, Melbourne and Bendigo, Melbourne and the Latrobe Valley. 150-kilometre trains, getting there in an hour. That moves population and people on where they can live and work. That's number one. Secondly, we built a strong education system, very important. We're a high-wage, high-skill country. It's not cheap to do business in Australia. So your skills and abilities, a bit like Germany, have to be paramount. And so investing in education is very important. And so we invested in education. I wanted to lift the completion rate to Year 12 education to 90%, and we did. It was around 70%. So the majority of people do 12 years of education, and then the majority go on to university or to a higher education degree. That's important for our future. And they're probably two of the areas which I think made an enormous difference to our state.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of hard work.
Yes.
And you did it the right way. Mm-hmm. You did it your way. Mm-hmm. And why did you resign in 2008 when you were so successful?
Yes.
And you know, usually in Lebanon, nobody knows how to resign. They resign when they're dead.
Yes.
So you are the example of this Lebanese, or from Lebanon, the Australian from Lebanese descent, who resigns when he is at the top.
Yes.
Why?
Well, not just in Lebanon, most places of the world, politicians do it very badly in resigning. They usually either go out on a scandal, or they lose their position because they're voted out, or their party dumps them. I wanted to change that. I set a target for myself when I first got in as Premier. I wanted to be there for about 7 years. I was there for 8 years. I wanted to leave behind a strong team so that we could have good succession planning. I was Premier for 8 years. I won 3 mandates, 3 terms. I thought it was the right way to go. And to go out when things are going well is much better. And for me, I could move on to another post-politics career, which is very unusual, and that's what I've done. So it is very hard to do. You're always tempted to stay there and think, well, it's going well, why can't I stay? But I think it's important to have good people coming behind you, and that's what I want to achieve.
Yes, and I'm sure you achieved a lot, and you have a lot to achieve still. You are also the patron of the Australian Lebanese Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I know it's a very important position. Do you do some great projects with Lebanon, successful ones? As you know, trade is very important.
Yeah, yes, trade and also investment. I also serve now on the Bank of Sydney, which is wholly owned by the Bank of Beirut.
Yes,
and I'm on their holding board in Australia. And that is an investment of about $500 million by Salim Savir in Australia, which is a significant investment.
Of course.
Having a banking licence in Australia is a great benefit. So trade is important, and yes, the Chamber here deals with the Chamber in Lebanon, and we try to enhance trade. But getting inbound investment and looking at investment from Australia in Lebanon is very important. We'd like to see Australia have the opportunity with Lebanon in the inevitable rebuilding of Syria, for example, which is going to happen, and all the investment that will need to go in there, partnerships with Lebanon from Australia, I think will help us in doing that, and we hope that could be a great opportunity in the future.
We hope so, because I do believe in Lebanon as much as you believe in it, and you believe in Australia too. My last question before we go into the family a bit, what are your future projects in Australia?
I'm mostly in the finance industry now. I'm the chair of the board of a major superannuation pension fund. It's in the building construction sector, CBUS. We have about $37 billion under management, about 1 million Australians who are part of that fund, so I'm the chair of that. I'm on the Bank of Sydney. I'm on the board of Jardine Lloyd Thompson, the insurers. So I've got several finance roles across Australia, which I enjoy. But I also keep my hand in politics because I advise the Prime Minister of East Timor, who is a good friend of mine, and I assist him in governance in our neighbouring country. So I do that as well. So
I hope you advise our politicians too, and our ministers too.
If invited.
I hope so.
So I'm very active in my post-political career, but I'm enjoying it immensely.
Yes, and I know that you have won a lot of prizes and awards, and this is amazing. If we want to go through them, we will have to stay hours. So we congratulate you for all the prizes you got. بستقطب أستراليا أكبر عدد من المهاجرين بالعالم، ويوجد فيها اختلاف ثقافي مهم جداً، كما بتتميز بحياتها الطبيعية والبيئية الاستثنائية. Do you think if he was born in Lebanon, would he be as controversial as he is now in Melbourne?
Australia is somewhere between America and Europe in our values and our value system. We're not America.
Being a father is much more difficult than being a premier, don't you think? السيد ستيف براكس إنسان عظيم جداً، وهو من أهم الشخصيات الأسترالية من أصل لبناني. الملفت أيضاً أنه هو أول حاكم من أصل عربي لولاية فيكتوريا، وكان حاكم لثلاث ولايات متتالية، وهذا الشيء بنشوفه كتير قليل لأنه محبة الشعب له كتير كبيرة، وشغله العظيم لولاية فيكتوريا أثرت فيهم كتير أيضاً. والملفت أيضاً أنه استقال من كان بأوج نجاحه وعطائه كحاكم لولاية فيكتوريا، وهذا الشيء ما بنلاقيه قليل جداً، أنه نلاقي حداً عم بيستقيل من السياسة. هو هذا الشيء بيميزه، لأنه لقى أنه بيقدر يعطي محل تاني أكثر مما بيقدر يعطي اليوم من بعد 3 ولايات متتالية كحاكم لولاية فيكتوريا.
Well, I was extremely pleased with the interview because I thought it might just be about my political career and going through achievements or things that didn't happen, but to have such a comprehensive interview about, you know, the origins of my family, where they came from, how they settled here, how we integrated and worked in Australia over a long period of time, and to talk about some of the personal aspects which I think are very important, because that's really what the story of Lebanon is about. And the Lebanese aren't just the people in Lebanon, they're the people from all over the world, the majority of which have settled in other countries, including Australia. So I thought it was great, great from my point of view. It drew more out of me as a former governor, former premier of the state of Victoria, and I feel better that this story has now been told. Well done and congratulations.
Mr. Bracks, you are married to an Australian lady, and you have got 3 children, 2 boys and a lovely girl. Was it a love story? How did you meet your wife? And tell us more about the part of being a father. Is it difficult? Is it nice? And we'll talk more about it, but let me know about your love story with your wife.
Well, it was a love story. We met when she was a teacher. She was a physical education teacher. I was a commerce teacher a long time ago. Okay. You know, we did move in the same circles, and eventually I worked up the courage to ask her out one day. But yeah, it's been a romance from then, and it's been a great journey ever since. And we're lucky enough to have 3 beautiful children.
Nick.
They're all living in Melbourne because Melbourne's such a big city with lots of opportunities. Nick, who's working for a company marketing applications for phones.
Yeah.
Amy's an architect, a practicing architect, and we've still got one at university who's finishing his arts degree at Melbourne University.
The youngest.
So we're very lucky that they're able to stay in Melbourne, so they're all together here, living outside, but they're on their journey and their way forward too.
And I know that Nick also worked a bit as a model.
Yes.
I googled him, and he's a very handsome
He must have got that from his Lebanese background. His Lebanese background, I guess, yeah.
Do you think if he was born in Lebanon, would he be as controversial as he is now in Melbourne?
No, definitely not. No. The controversy was when I was Premier, he was caught drink driving.
Indeed, this is what I heard.
That was a bit of an issue, but these things
happen. And this is why you resigned, or it was not
really. I was going to resign anyway after 8 years, but it helped, I think, make that decision and get back to the family.
You did it faster than you thought.
Yes, yeah. But no, he's going really well, making his way. Yes, it probably wouldn't have been an issue in Lebanon, would it?
Yeah, maybe
no.
it would have been much at ease.
Oh yes.
Yes.
No, but it's all gone well. He's going very well.
And do they know about their Lebanese roots, about the background?
Oh yes, they do.
They do.
Not only know, they love it. And they've been to Lebanon with me too, and Terry and the family.
Many times?
They've been once, but they loved it too. And we met up with some of the relations, the Bracks family in Zali. So yes, they like that. They all cook Lebanese. They love talking about Lebanon. So it's still part of the culture which has come out.
And do you find it difficult to be a father when you are a successful politician? Do you have some time? Not maybe now more, but when you were a premier,
Sure.
did you have some quality time with your children?
Yeah, you had to work on it, and certainly because I was so busy, it's not just a job, it's a vocation, it takes you over. And so I used every bit of my spare time to be with the family rather than going out on Friday nights drinking or whatever else. So yes, I had to work on it, and I'm still working on it, but it's good. We are a very close family.
I know that being a father is much more difficult than being a premier, don't you think?
Yes, well, it's difficult, but it's also very rewarding and great fun, and I love it. Yeah,
yeah, indeed. None of your 3 children are interested in politics?
No, well, they're interested in politics, but not interested in politics as a career. So they all have values, understand issues, get involved.
So you try to raise them like you were raised by your Lebanese parents?
Absolutely. Like my father, who encouraged me to debate and argue and discuss and to get involved in things. So we do with our children as well. And yes, that's been handed down. But they're all found their careers elsewhere, and that's a good thing.
I think so.
You know, everyone chooses their own way in life, but they're still active as individuals in issues, which is important.
Do you advise them in life?
I advise them where I can, yes. I think they'll come to me and come to my wife, who's very able, Terry, and as well. We're a pretty,
of course.
She's very able. We're very formidable.
She's the one behind them when you're not around.
Very formidable couple. She's very able and involved too, yeah.
And do Australians raise their children like Lebanese? Are they similar, or we are similar to more to Mediterranean like Greeks, Italians? Or do you think that Australians do have the same values as Lebanese?
I think very similar values. Australia is somewhere between America and Europe in our values and our value system. We're not America, and we're not Europe. We're somewhere in between those two. And so I know, Lebanese has a European tradition as well, of course. So we're somewhere close to that, but not completely. So we have our own way in Australia. It's very free, open, very democratic. You can do what you want, you can achieve what you want. But we probably don't have as significant an extended family, so much more individualistic, I guess, as we have in the US from that point of view. But more and more you're seeing more with our multiculturalism of the extended family coming in.
I know we have been talking a bit about Lebanon all the way, but I will ask you some questions about Lebanon just after this break. ملبورن عاصمة أستراليا لمدة 26 سنة من 1901 ل 1927 قبل ما تصبح كامبرا هي العاصمة اليوم. وبتتميز ملبورن بطقسها المتقلب، ففينا نختبر بيوم واحد 4 فصول.
Nothing compared to my visit when I went back as Premier, and there was banners in the street and horses and donkeys running taking me back to my family home.
So what do you advise our politicians to be united?
And I've never hidden my Lebanese background. I was the first Premier of this state who had a non-English speaking background historically, and I was very proud of that.
سألته إذا كان أصعب يكون بي من إنه يكون حاكم، وابتسم. أكيد قال لي أكيد مش هين إنه واحد يكون بي، وجرب إنه يكون قريب ويضل يعطي كواليتي تايم لأولاده الثلاثة، وخاصة إنه ابنه الكبير صبي ما كتير كان ملاحق الحياة الرايقة. لفترة صغيرة كان موديل وكان يسهر ويحب الحياة الصاخبة، وهذا الشيء ما بيتوافق مع حياة بيو كسياسي. ولكن المهم إنه قدر يجمع هالعائلة، عنده محبة كتير لأولاده، بيقدر كمان إنه نقوا يعني أمور مثل بنته عم تعمل اركيتكت، وابنه هلا بمنصب مهم بشركه، وابنه الثالث بالجامعه. ما حدا مشي على خطى بيو، ولكن كل واحد نقى شيء بيحبه وعم ينجح فيه. I know you've been to Lebanon many times, maybe 5 times.
Yes.
Many times as the premier of Victoria, and many times also as a Lebanese from Zahle. Tell me, the first time you went to Zahle, what did you feel? Did you visit your grandfather's house? You were welcomed, warmly welcomed, like usually welcomed in Lebanon.
It was an unbelievably good welcome. I had an early visit just after the Civil War in 1994, when I was part of an opposition, an all-party group, and that was much more low-key. But I can remember visiting the Qadri Hotel, which our ancestors owned, for example, and that was quite emotional.
Yes.
Yeah, that was quite emotional, actually. But nothing compared to my visit when I went back as Premier, and there was banners in the street and horses and donkeys running, taking me back to my family home, taking it to the church where my great-grandparents were married. So it was a big event, and it was emotional from my point of view. I didn't think it would be emotional because, of course, most of my family hadn't been to Lebanon.
Yeah.
Our relatives are so distant, cousins of my great-grandfather. But once you're there, once I was there, it was extremely emotional. I could feel the connection. I could feel this is where I came from. And I had a moving moment, of course, when I went to Baalbek,
Yes.
the ancient Roman ruins.
Yes.
And I was taken there by a friend of the family when I was Premier, and they showed me some graffiti. You call it graffiti, I think, don't you? Some writing on the walls.
The graphics, yeah.
And they said, that is your great-grandfather, Salim Bracks, who signed his name on the wall, which I've got a picture of still. And I thought, wow, this is an amazing historic connection that I couldn't have in any other country. And so, yes, it did hit home for me enormously.
Of course, it's beautiful, really. And what is your attachment to Lebanon? Do you think I'm just from Lebanese descent, or you say I am Lebanese but living in Australia, or I'm Australian Lebanese? I know it's a difficult question because we are Lebanese at heart, but I need to understand what is your relationship to Lebanon.
I would describe myself as an Australian of proud Lebanese descent. And I've never hidden my Lebanese background. I was the first Premier of this state who had a non-English speaking background historically, certainly the first from a Middle Eastern and Lebanese background, and I was very proud of that. Very proud. I didn't hide it, and it was pushed and promoted. So yes, I think that is a positive from my point of view. I would love to see Lebanon have an extended period of peace, as we all would, so it can rebuild. It's amazing how it rebuilds so quickly and effectively after that period of peace. It just needs more time. I'd love to see a unity of purpose in the country. That is, knowing exactly where it wants to go and having a commonality and an agreement on that, because that's going to be so powerful if that happens. And I think if differences can be put aside, political differences, if outside influences can diminish, and if people just stand up for Lebanon, I think it'll make an enormous difference. So that'd be my hope and ambition for the country, that people do that.
So what do you advise our politicians to be united?
I think unity, discipline and focus. Unity of purpose. Focus on the things that really matter to the people of Lebanon and not matter to people outside, and deliver on that. And discipline in doing it. Don't divert from the task. That would be the three things I'd say would be very important for the future.
Yeah. And what are your investments in Lebanon? Do you have any investments?
I have no investments in Lebanon at all. Every time I go there, I think about it.
And why do you hesitate?
Maybe something in Zali would be quite good.
Something in Zali. In Asmaa min al-Tarikh, which is my show, and at the end of our interview, I would like you to promise something to all the Lebanese who are watching you in Lebanon and around the world. Can you promise to invest something in Zali?
Yes, I'll promise to invest something. I'll just have to find what it is.
When?
Oh, well, soon.
Soon? This is a promise, Mr. Bracks.
I've got you. I know you'll make me accountable. I've got you.
So with this beautiful promise, we will conclude this wonderful interview. I know I needed hours with you, but I know your time is very tight, and I want to thank you for your time and for really accepting to make this interview. It was an honor, and I want to tell you that we are proud. In the name of all the Lebanese in Lebanon and around the world, we are proud to have Steve Bracks as an Australian from Lebanese descent, and bravo for everything you did to Melbourne. Hope you can do a bit to Lebanon too. We are in need of people like you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and thank you very much for paying time and attention to Australia and the Lebanese diaspora here. I know they're very pleased to see that you're here in our country, so thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you. تعرفنا بأول حلقة من موسم جديد من أسماء من التاريخ من ملبورن أستراليا على شخصية أسترالية من أصل لبناني، السيد ستيف براكس، هالإنسان العظيم اللي غير بمعايير السياسة بولاية فيكتوريا. إذا بدكم تعرفوا أكثر عن هالحلقة أو عن السيد ستيف براكس، ما تنسوا تتابعونا على مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي. وما تنسوا تتابعونا الأسبوع القادم تكتشفوا اسم جديد من أسماء من التاريخ.